Last week I discussed how the MCU's quality was dipping due to being overworked by Disney and how they were just now getting some breathing room in order to improve their quality of their movies after playing catch-up for a little bit. Luckily, despite that dip, the MCU has always been a surefire win for the box office, so the movies will continue to make money long enough for us to see that quality rise once more. Yikes! Yep, it's finally happened. People have grown so tired of the MCU that the box office has started to decline, which, don't get me wrong, the MCU movies have always had a steep second week drop, but it only seems to be getting worse and worse, and oh, well that's not as bad, maybe they'll psych! The MCU's lowest second weekend drop ever with Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. What's causing this decline? And I must again ask, will this result in the MCU's demise? In Phase 1, the movies won over fans of various genres, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and classic pulpy action, before bringing them all together for one big blowout with the Avengers, resulting in the highest-grossing non-James Cameron film of all time. While some films that followed in Phase 2, like Thor: The Dark World and Guardians of the Galaxy, still mostly appealed to their primary audiences, films like Iron Man 3 and Avengers: Age of Ultron continued to reach their new wide spectrum, while the promises of what was yet to come continued to get bigger and more intriguing. After that, something interesting happened in Phase 3 with films like Captain America: Civil War, Spider-Man: Homecoming, and Black Panther, winning just as big of numbers at the box office, despite what you may think about such films only appealing to niche audiences. But because the MCU timeline was starting to become more and more enticing on its own, longtime followers started to combine with newcomers to result in some stellar box office numbers, all leading up to the big box office blowout Avengers: Infinity War, which left on such a huge cliffhanger that it fooled people into thinking they had to watch Captain Marvel in order to know what happened in Avengers Endgame, when Ant-Man and the Wasp, which not as many people saw, actually meant a lot more to the timeline. Actually, while the intrigue of knowing what would happen in Endgame did play a part in Captain Marvel's success, I also think Captain Marvel herself is such a conventional and easy to grasp superhero that it gave her universal appeal as well. All that culminated into one of the biggest box office hits ever that would never be matched up again, possibly, which is both a good thing for the studio and a bad thing. While the Phase 4 movies haven't been doing bad per se, if anything, Shang-Chi was one of the films considered to save theaters from the pandemic, the box office blowouts we saw before haven't even come close to being matched by anything in Phase 4 except for No Way Home, which many people have argued its success had less to do with the MCU legacy and more to do with the Spider-Man film legacy. And yes, I know the pandemic has slowed down the frequency of billion-dollar club movies to a point where I think people created the 500 million club or something, but I feel like in the case of the MCU, there's a worse problem on the horizon. As I mentioned, the appeal that kept people going through phases 1 through 3 was the build-up to something bigger and better, and people knew they had to keep watching through everything to reach that pinnacle. And at the time, everything consisted of one movie every 3 months or so, which was a lot, but not too much. Now, not only does everything consist of, as I mentioned last week, 4 movies and 5 TV shows in 1 year, but most non-comic book enthusiasts such as myself aren't even really sure yet what it's supposed to be building up to. Which is to say, they've announced exactly what it's building up to, Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, but there have been so many movies and TV shows that I'm not even sure what part everything is supposed to play. What part does Moon Knight play? Or the Eternals? Why do I have to sit through 12 episodes of poorly CG'd and unfunny Parks and Rec? Apart from what I guarantee you will turn out to be an entirely pointless sitcom, the only thing I can guess is that Phase 4 was simultaneously trying to be the epilogue to the Infinity Saga, while also establishing multiverses and gods as prominent plot elements in this multiverse saga. The way they're establishing all that is jumbled and messy. The Infinity Saga kept things simple. Create simple origin stories for most of the main heroes in the Avengers, then have them cross over into a simple good versus evil story with characters that we've already grown to know and love. Then, who's that guy at the end of the Avengers? Well, he's Thanos, and he wants to collect 6 Infinity Stones and wipe out half the universe, and the Avengers are the only ones that can stop him. 2 movies after that, the Infinity Stones get their introduction, and the next few movies after that either introduce more of the stones or result in the demise of S.H.I.E.L.D. and then eventually the Avengers. Each movie continued to follow up on the promise of what was yet to come within the time span of 1 to 2 movies, a simple model for audiences to follow. With Phase 4 and now 5, not only are we not entirely sure after an entire phase what's being promised, apart from the next Thanos-level threat that, without spoiling anything from Quantumania or Loki, has basically had his threat caliber demolished by this point, but what they do promise on, they are taking forever ever to follow up on. Not only did people who don't have Disney Plus and therefore didn't watch WandaVision have no idea why Wanda went crazy in Doctor Strange 2, but the movie that was supposed to follow up on Monica Rambeau's mid-credits scene from WandaVision and the ending to Miss Marvel, again, for people who have seen these shows, has been delayed until November. Which, yes, I did state that as a positive thing to improve the overall quality of the actual movie, but my point is that the longer you take to follow up on a promise, the less audiences are going to believe that you'll live up to that promise. Again, the Infinity Saga knew to stretch audiences' patience and retention of information so far. Now, not only is there more time between promises and follow-ups, but there's more content that they're expecting us to watch with more information to retain, and all of it is supposed to play a part in 2 or 3 Avengers movies? Heck, have you noticed how many things they've teased that haven't been followed up on? Like, what's that signal that Shang-Chi was looking at with Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner? What could they possibly do with Hercules teased in Thor Love and Thunder? Who's this Eros at the end of Eternals? Thor the Dark World's mid-credits scene teases Tanalir Tavan, and that gets followed up on 2 movies later. Shang-Chi came out almost 2 years ago, and we still don't know what that signal is. Is it possible that the MCU is so scattershot by this point that they've been teasing things that they might not even follow up on just to see what sticks? Well, if the box office results are proof of anything, it's that nothing's sticking. What Marvel Studios used to treat as a storytelling tactic that they've been doing great at sticking the landing on, they're now treating as a bag of tricks, which, again, part of me sees as not necessarily Marvel's fault as much as Disney basically handing them a checklist and forcing them to turn out product after product based around it, along with undercut dramatic moments with comedic moments, and 90% of the visuals have to be CGI. But audiences are clearly not viewing it that way and are instead catching on to their trickery alongside the extra baggage of information they're expected to retain for longer and deciding, you know, maybe these movies just aren't worth it anymore, and opting out before they even have a chance to return to the quality that I indicated last week would be coming. Maybe all this will culminate in something amazing, but something tells me that unless Marvel does something to hook in audiences again, we might not get to see that culmination, as we may never see that box office blowout that the MCU has been known for, which, since Hollywood has always been about these numbers, may indeed result in the collapse of the great MCU. I wish I could end on a more positive note, but yeah, that looks like the direction we're heading. Yes, I'm aware that Shang-Chi 2 and Eternals 2 were recently added to their development schedule, but do you know how many films in general were in development before they were scrapped? It means nothing if these box office numbers don't go up. In any other case, let's just hope the Gunverse holds up.